What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mortgage Coach Friday Mastermind. Every Friday, 9 o'clock, we are here to mastermind, put on the best mastermind in the mortgage industry for the entire week. At least that's the goal. Today, I do have Todd Bookspan, although he is, I think a lot of you guys know, my co-pilot, wingman, is traveling the country right now in a Airstream. I think he's having some internet issues. So he will be popping in and we will be doing this together. But we've got a special guest, and it's someone that I know well enough that I asked to be the special guest on this call. But there's a lot I don't know about Darius. I do know he's been referred to me multiple times. The most recent introduction was through Isaac Stedman. Is that right, Darius? Isaac's the one that hooked us up?
Yeah, Isaac made the intro, so it's good to have him do it. You've been on my radar too, so here we are.
Yeah, it's just two people. Like, we're running in the same cruise. I've heard of your book. I've always wanted to read your book. Isaac, thank you for hooking us up. So, Darius, I was going to try to say your last name. I know we rehearsed it pre-stage. Say your last name for me one more time.
Yeah, there's a reason why my website's therealdarius.com instead of not my first and last name. It's Mirshahzadeh. It's a big, scary Persian name, but it's you don't want to know what it means in Farsi?
Bring it.
Yeah, it means descendant of the royal king. Yeah.
Boom.
Boom.
There.
Yeah, don't.
Mirshahzadeh.
Yeah,
so
there
Darius, you go. Mirshahzadeh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I said it.
We got it.
Well, I'm going to go with the real Darius. And I might just call you Darius for most of the call. Yeah. But dude, here's what I remember when we had our, I wouldn't call it a prep call, but we had a get to know you call that brought us together today. Is I came off of it going, you know what? One of the most impactful videos, presentations I've ever seen in my entire life was Simon Sinek when he brought out why and go deep on your why. And it literally, we could spend an hour just talking about that TED Talk, but it was transformative. It was one of those, we have these pivot points in our life. We have these points where we transition and go to another level. And that was one of them. And I remember that, you know what, this is going to an even bigger level. Like, this is talking to you, hearing about your book. It's like, how do we document our why? How do we think about our why? And how do we take it to the next level so that we live a why-driven life? Is that a good setup for a conversation with you?
Yeah. So it's funny is we got to talking about that, and so Simon talks about the golden circle, which is their why, and he draws these three circles within each other, and the farthest is your what. What is it that we do or sell or whatever. The how do we get it there, and then the why is in the middle. I actually a buddy of mine and I were talking about this, and we believe that, and I think where my book and my experience in thought leadership actually, I think, goes one step further is what is part of that why is the who are we as individuals, and my book's about values, which I think really plays into and really collaborates with the why. The why is the purpose, right? Why should anyone watch this show? Why should they care what I have to say? And I think a lot of that has to do with who we are and our core values. Where I got really nerdy was, how do you take your core values and affect your life with it in business, life, family, whatever it is. The book's focused mostly on business because that was my experience, was creating core value driven organizations. But yeah, Simon talks a lot about that, and your values level up to your why. Your why is the highest. That's the North Star. And I'm a huge fan of his. I met him 11 years ago, and before anyone knew who he was, and changed my life too.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like it was another level in documentation. Like, I'm going to come off of this call and I'm like, okay, I've done life planning, and it's your mission, it's your vision, it's your values, it's strategies and goals. But I felt like, hey, I'm going to come off expanding on that. So now we did get Todd Bookspan back. What's up, Todd?
Not much. Sorry. Internet turned off, but now it's back on.
All right. Well, I did have that right, everybody. Airstream Todd Bookspan is back. So Darius, before we get into the book, and I do want to make sure we spend a lot of the call on the book, I know you have a backstory in the mortgage space, so why don't we just start with, for loan officers, like, we've got wannabe top producers. We have some of America's absolute most successful loan officers in America. In fact, I'm interviewing the #1 loan officer in America with G-Rate, Shant Banosian. And I don't know if you know Sean, but he's with G-Rate and he's in Boston. And I think he did like 1.8 billion in production, over 3,000 loans, with a team. And just interviewing the guy in the prep call, I could tell he is a values-driven human being. But what's your backstory, man? Like, what did you do in the mortgage business?
Yeah, well, I'll start where I ended and then I'll go to where I started. So I most recently exited my business. It's called the Money Source, TMS. It's currently $100 billion mortgage company. They manage $100 billion of servicing. We're one of probably the 10th largest correspondent lender in the United States, and specializing in Ginnie Mae, mostly FHA, VA, USDA. So if you're LO, there's probably about a 1 in 10 chance that if it's a VA, FHA, or VA loan, we're going to buy that loan. And so I ended up on the aggregation side of the business at the end, where I was buying loans from mortgage bankers. G-Rate is a seller to us. We buy from them. We buy from about 500 different lenders in the United States. We service and subservice. So we service, like I mentioned, about $100 billion worth of mortgages. So that's where I ended. I built that with my partners from 30 of us to about 1,000 of us in 3 years, and was CEO of that company and ran that company for 7 years. And I left about a year ago and did my book. And now I'm really I'm hanging out. I'm working with some really high growth mortgage companies, helping them scale their business as an advisor and doing consulting work. So I'm doing that for fun. And you guys know who you are because they call me their secret weapon. And I'm doing some non-mortgage too. And Dave, you and I talked about that, this idea around the scaling up models and these best practices for high growth companies. So I got steeped. I was basically, I grew up in the entrepreneurial side of the business, and really built my companies that way. But that's where I ended. And it was a great ride, man.
Hey, before you run past that, you mentioned scaling up, and that was one thing where we really connected. One of my most long-term coaches that I paid was Ron Huntington. And I went to one of Vern Harnish's 3-day workshops. I went to it by myself. I went to it with my leadership team. And then for 5 years, maybe 3 years, I paid Ron every month to, well, at the time, he had to fly from Seattle and he conducted a meeting. But I mean, that is my principles for business. And just give a plug for that, because I know you grew up in that community. You're a leader in that community. And I do think loan officers that want to, they're entrepreneurs, and reading that book and getting those principles would be valuable. So would you mind just giving a minute on what that is so people know?
Yeah. So that was about a third of the way into my career. I got introduced to that. And so I was building my first company I built. So it's like, why do we want to hear about this guy who's the servicer production guy? It's like, well, because I started off as a telemarketer and a loan officer. I joked to everybody, I said, I'm the only guy probably in the country that was cold calling title leads on index cards in 1996, and then managing $100 billion worth of servicing in 2019, in 2020. So I got into the business, started a brokerage, and I built it. And this is a really important backstory because it really leads to how I met Vern, who you just spoke of, and got into this whole idea around how do you build a high growth business. I started my company in 2003, my first company. I was a LO before that, companies in Orange County and in the Bay Area. I went off on my own when I was 25. I was an LO. I was really a net branch of a company called Pacific Mortgage Consultants. Me and an assistant. That grew very quickly. I became my own broker by 2004. And then I became a lender by 2006. And I had about 150 employees, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was an LO that was a self-taught entrepreneur. And back then, being an entrepreneur was not what it is today. You ask anybody, what do you do? They'll tell you their job, and then they'll tell you they're an entrepreneur. Back then, I was the only person I knew who was an entrepreneur. And I lived in San Francisco, which says a lot. Like everyone's an entrepreneur in San Francisco. I mean, I was the only entrepreneur I knew and living in San Francisco, and I was 25 years old, which everyone's like, that's like the opposite now. And it was the opposite then. And so I was building the company, and by 2005, we were probably funding, I don't know, 15, 20 million a month. and I had probably 20 or 30 LOs, and we were brokering most of our loans, and I was getting crushed. I mean, crushed. My nickname for myself was Firefighter Dave. And it was because I would do three things. I would go into my loan sales department, put out fires there for 30 days with my LOs. Then I'd go, then it would simmer down, and then I'd go into processing because that would be on fire. I put those fires out for 30 days. And anyone that knows 05 was kind of like now, like this year. It was a crazy, crazy year. 03, 04, 05 was kind of like 2020, I would say, similar. And then I put out the fires there, and then I go into loan telemarketing and put out the fires there for 30 days. And then the fires will be back on in sales. And I did this thing in this round robin. And so I was like, man, I can't do this. I was 27. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just getting my head kicked in. And I had LOs quitting, I had processors quitting, I had telemarketers quitting. And it was painful. It sucked. And so I applied for this program at MIT called Birthing of Giants that Vern Harnish put on. And he had a book back then called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. He had partnered with MIT and Inc. magazine, and they brought in 60 entrepreneurs under the age of 40 from all over the world for this 3-year program to basically teach them scaling up. And that was my introduction, and my mind was blown. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a way to grow a high growth business and not just guess on how to do it. And what it was is they call it now, there's another book out there called Traction by Gino Wickman. They call it entrepreneurial operating systems. How do you create this operating system to run your business and create scale and growth? And Vern's, one of the godfathers of that. And he was my mentor, and I learned from him directly. I was in the program with some of the top entrepreneurs in scaling up. If in the Scaling Up 2.0 book, 2 of the 5 case studies were people that were actually graduates who graduated from the program in the year I graduated. And so I got introduced to that.
By the way, this book lives on my desk. It is a constant source of reference.
Booyah, booyah, Dave.
Booyah.
Right here, baby.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah. Well, the Rockefeller Habits was my compass. Like that, I that was how I learned how to build, call it sustainable companies. And sometimes we grow really fast, sometimes we grow slow, but it's sustainable, and it's not. Well, every company has its dysfunction, so I don't want to overplay it. But I'm very proud of the culture that we have. I've got Robert listening, I've got my team listening, but I would say that is a Bible. So that's cool, man. And I don't think that came out in our last conversation. So I just learned something about you that I didn't know, and I didn't know that you were like one of those early dudes that helped build out that framework, and that Vern was your direct mentor. That's rad.
Yeah. He led the program. So like we'd go, and Vern he was the chair. He ran it. Like he was the guy that was running it one-on-one. So so we worked with Vern directly, and I didn't have a Gazelles coach then. I was just kind of self-taught and going to the program. And here's the funny thing is I grew the company, ended up growing from 60 to 150 employees by the end of 06. Now, anyone that's been in the business a long time probably knows where this story is headed. I was subprime mortgage lender. We were retail. We were doing, 100 loans a month. And August of 07 happened. And I had just started my course selling loans correspondent to, guys like IndyMac and Aurora, and I could go down the list. Resume. I'm going to name a bunch of guys from the past, right? And everyone's like, who's even naming? I have no idea the names he's even saying. I'm like, these are, countrywide, just like the biggest lenders in the United States at the time.
New Century.
Yeah. And so I was selling all those guys. And I remember I went up to my head of secondary one day and I said, hey, what would happen if stated income loans went away? And it was 2/3 of my business, stated income loans, pick-a-pays, option arms. Yeah, everyone's like, I don't even know what words he's using. Yeah, this was the language back then. There's a reason why you don't know about him, because it took down the world economy. And so I got crushed. I was between 03 and 06, my business, Twin Capital Mortgage, was the 40th fastest growing company in the United States. It was number 40 in the Inc. 5000. And when I went to that ceremony in September of 2007, I was the 40th fastest shrinking company in the United States. I went from 150 to 10 employees in 90 days. And the only reason I didn't go to 0 was because the train was skidding to the cliff, and it just stopped at the edge of the cliff. And I went from like a couple $1,000,000 in the bank to a couple $100,000 in the bank, and I had stopped the bleeding just before we died. And so it would be like this. It'd be like tomorrow, just for guests that don't remember, or for listeners that don't remember, that weren't around then. It'd be like tomorrow, I'm like, hey, no more Fannie, no more Freddie, no more Ginnie. There's just no more. Like, no more of those loans. Like, oh, by the way, you have a pipeline, and it dies all at once. So that's what happened to my company, and I got crushed. I mean, and what ended up happening was the next 5 years, I was in like this entrepreneurial purgatory where I was pivoting. I got into reverse mortgage. I grew that like crazy. We were doing like 45 HECMs a month. We were one of the fastest growing HECM reverse mortgage lenders in the United States, retail. Then I got into branching because that got crushed in 09. Everyone's, oh, reverses are the best. I'm like, not in 09, they weren't. 09, they paid zero yield spread premium, or what we don't call it that now, but they paid zero like back. Like you had to charge a premium, and that was all you got. And it went from like 3 points to zero. They're like, you did reverses for 3 points? And I'm like, oh yeah, well, that was awesome back then. It went from 3 to 0 overnight, and we got killed there. So I just kept getting killed everywhere I went. So eventually I shut Twin Capital down in 10 because we were getting pummeled by borrowers who didn't like their loans they took, and got into branching for a hot minute. And then I found my footing in wholesale. And I started a joint venture with a company called Pacific Union Financial that a friend of mine started, Evan Stone. I got him in the business actually. And me and my brother and a partner and Evan, we grew that company from, it was a small regional player. This is back when Stearns was a big wholesale lender. And we grew it to Pacific Union that got bought by Mr. Cooper in 2018.
That was a big platform, by the way. I mean, congratulations. I mean, that was in the consumer direct space. Like if you're ever looking for any loan officers, if you've shopped for loans on Zillow or any consumer direct space, they're always a price leader. You know, I mean, that's a call center based, low price, consumer direct play at the highest level. I mean, you guys really ran an efficient shop.
Yeah. So we grew. I built wholesale. Ali Vafai, the president, built correspondent. And so at this point I was in B2B. I was working directly with brokers. I was working directly with, and then they got into retail after we left. So in 13, they brought in the guys from Arroyo Loan Services. We decided that we wanted to move on. And so I went to this small company in New York that no one's ever heard of at that point called The Money Source. Even today, I say they're the biggest company in mortgage. They're the biggest mortgage company in America you've never heard of. I mean, they're massive. They're a tech company. We manage $100 billion worth of mortgages now. And that company was doing maybe 50, 60 million a month when I got there. And we grew that. Today, they fund $1 billion, $1.5 billion a month. And they service, like I said, $100 billion worth of mortgages. And we built that. And the key to all this, the reason I bring all this up, Dave, is I want to go back to 08 when I was getting crushed. I had this moment when I was at MIT where two of the guys who are case studying the Scaling Up book we were just talking about, who run this company called Nurse Next Door, Ken Sim and John DeHart, they were in my class, and they said, they did a peer-to-peer workshop, but they said, please stand up if your company has core values. And there's 60 of us in the room. We just graduated. I had built core values of my company at this point. We were trying to build a cool company. I'm in San Francisco. I'm competing with tech companies. And so I stand up, 59 other people stand up. And they go, please stay standing if you know your company's core values and can say them off the top of your head. Now, mind you, these are all the CEOs that created them. Half the room sits down. Now, the gut punch was I was in that half. My company just had core values and they weren't memorable. And I wrote them. I created them. And I sat down and I was like, whoa, this is weird. Why didn't I know them? And why don't these other people know them? Then they went one step further, which is please stay standing if your employees know your core values and can say them off the top of their head. Half of the remaining half sat down. So if we got a bunch of LOs and branch managers and production people out there, think about it right now. Close your eyes. Don't look. Do you know your company's core values at the top of your head? 9 out of 10 of you will raise your hand that you have company core values. But what percentage of you actually know them off the top of your head without having to look at them? And when I saw that 3/4 of the room sat down, I was like, now I was kind of intrigued. I was like, okay, like I'm disgusted with myself, but I'm also intrigued at the same time. Then they said, please stay standing. And this is the kicker. Please stay standing if your customers know your core values. everyone sat down except the two guys running the workshop. And it was it changed my life, that moment. It changed my life. The next morning, I was sitting in a diner in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I just graduated from MIT at this program, and I rewrote the core values for my company. And I realized there had to be a better way. How could I be amongst all these people that were these amazing entrepreneurs and none of them knew their core values? Their employees didn't know their core values. And for some reason, it just felt right to me that you needed to know them. And what I did is I experimented with them over the next 5 years. And the first big win I got, and this is where I think branch managers and production people will appreciate this, is I wasn't the CEO of Pacific Union Financial. I was running wholesale in the East Coast. And I just took my entire division and I said, the company didn't have core values at the time. I just created our own core values for our division. I said, here's our core values, and I managed them to it. And we quickly became the fastest growing division at Pacific Union. And then I ended up leaving that business and I went to TMS and I built it from the ground up. And when I built it from the ground up at TMS, it was amazing what happened. We went from 30 to 300 employees in 18 months. This is a small shop. They were doing, 30, 40 million, 50 million a month, so 60 million a month, maybe on a good month, 80. This is in 2013. We went from 30 to 300 employees in 18 months, and we had zero growing pains, zero record growth, record profitability. Then from 2016, so this is mid 2013 to mid 15, to end of 15, the end of 14, we grew to 300 employees. From 14 to the end of 16, we grew to 1,000 employees. So I grew that company from literally from 30 to 1,000 employees. And for me, I realized something when I grew from 30 to 300 with zero growing pains was I noticed that everyone was speaking the same language. And what I had done is I'd become this core value evangelist. I realized that I could make the core values the language in the organization. If you go to, I implore anyone, go to Glassdoor and look up the money source and read the reviews. I already done this. There's 193 instances where they mention the word core values. And it's because it became the language of the organization. And when I believe that core values have the opportunity to become the language of our organizations, to create accountability around that language. And when we control the language, we control the results. So whether you're managing a small branch, whether you're managing a large division, whether you're a person like me that was building one of the largest lenders in the United States, it doesn't matter. I want to control the language of the organization because I want to control the accountability. Core values are the language of accountability. And for me, I just got insane about it. I nerded out about it. And it changed my life and it changed my business. And for that, I'm forever grateful.
Wow. Dude, I did not know that story, even close to it. And I'm humbled. And I, at different times as a leader of a company, I've always had core values. Sometimes the employees know them, sometimes they don't. I don't think that my customers have ever known our core values. I've said them from calls, and a lot of people don't know it, but the name of Mortgage Coach is not Mortgage Coach. It's Wow Tools. And our number one value, which I do know, and I think a lot of customers know it, is wow, surpass people's expectations externally and internally, whether that's a customer or whether that's someone you work with. So I got a couple of questions, but before I do that, I want to give Todd a chance to either unpack anything you just said or to ask the next question. Todd, what do you got?
Well, first off, I love the story, right? There's a couple of people here who said, wow, that was so painful. Tamala did. And I think any of us who were back in those days can, the 04, 05, through the crash journey can totally relate. And, my first observation is just how resilient, you are, the fact that you continue to go from one success and then hit a road bump. And then you figured out what the next success was. You went from, stated income to reverse to obviously the markets that you've served since then. So kudos to you for that. I think that's one thing that our community needs to be thinking about as the market's going to change over the next, 6, 8, 12 months as rates at some point will start to go away and it's going to be a different market. I think so from that perspective, obviously I love the fact that you say that if you can control the language, you can control the results. How would you encourage an individual loan officer who's in a company that doesn't have that those core values stated to maybe create their own, what would your thought be on that?
Yeah, I mean, like I'd say buy my book and read chapters 1 through 5, and that'll show it. So the way the book's created is it's around how do you basically what I've realized, and we were talking about scaling up, because scaling up teaches you got to have values and mission and vision. If you do traction, same thing. And this is the best practice. If you go to business school, it's the first thing they teach you. So what I tell people is, look, companies don't have core values. People have core values. I'll repeat that. Companies don't have core values. People have core values. And what ends up happening is we bring in a group of people together and we get a mixture of values. And we have an opportunity there to, like I said earlier, make it the language of the organization. What happens normally is people just discover their values. And there's tons of processes for this. You can go to my website and sign up and we'll send you a discovery guide. You could discover your values. That's a well-worn path. Then what they do is they roll them out in their business and then they try, and it's usually a week rollout. And then there's some medium to poor ongoing implementation and they just kind of fall flat on their face. And if you're in a mortgage company that has this, I would argue that we get busy doing loans, putting out fires, dealing with borrowers and underwriters and processors and our LOs. And if you're an LO, we're dealing with the customer. And it's like, yeah, core value, schmore value. I got work to do. And I call that BAU, business as usual, right? So by the way, that's in every business. Every business has business as usual. It's not like there's some magical like wand I wave and all of a sudden you start doing core values. It's like anything. Habit is how you do it. You got to create habits around this stuff. So your question was for an LO, and I would say is that I believe something to be true. And I want to tell you a quick story to illustrate this because it'll make the most sense if I tell you the story. So in 2018, we were really growing, we grew a lot in 2018, which most people are like, how'd you grow in 2018? I'm like, I just bucked the trend and, I did. And it was probably because we had built such a great company. But at the end of 18, I was working with this performance coach by the name of Dr. David Zellman. And he sat me down. He said, Darius, what do you think creates the results in your life? And I said, I don't know. Is it the actions we take? And he's like, okay. Well, what do you think creates the actions we take? And I said, I don't know. Is it the decisions we make? He said, well, why do you make those decisions? And I guess like 10 guesses and get them all wrong. And he goes, and he goes, look, I said, just give it to me, man. I don't know. And he said, what if I told you that the conversations we have with ourselves lead to the decisions we make, which lead to the actions we take, which lead to the results. And he actually said conversations equals actions, which equals results. And I threw in the decisions. And I said, he's like, what kind of conversations am I having with myself? What kind of conversations am I having with my team? What kind of conversations are happening in my company? And at this point, I had a core value driven organization. So I'm thinking about it in terms of all these things. But if you're an LO, I'm like, what kind of conversations are you having with your family? What kind of conversations are you having with your kids? What kind of conversations are you having with your borrowers? How are you talking to your processor? How are you talking to the ops manager? How are you talking to your branch manager? And then think about the results you're getting in your life. Are they in the same tone of those conversations? And what I realized was when I liked the conversations that I was having, I liked the results. And when I didn't like them, or when I overheard a team, how the way they were talking to each other, the conversations they were having, the results were always out of favor for what I was looking for as a leader. And it blew my mind and it changed my life. This was the second huge aha moment I had. And so fast forward to the beginning of 2019, and I had a postmortem with David, and he said to me, we're talking. And I said, hey man, I have something I want to run by you. And he said, what's that? I said, what do you think creates the conversations we have? And he laughs and he's like confused, right? Because he's like the teacher, right? This is where the student becomes a teacher. And he's like things we say, right? I said, yeah, what are those called? And he's like, words? I said, right. So the words we choose equals the conversations we have, right? Conversation is just a string of words. He's like, all right, where are you going with this? I said, what if I was to make the argument to you that if the core values became the language of your organization and your life, wouldn't they then become the words that we choose? that lead to the conversations we have, which lead to the decisions we make, which lead to the actions we take, which then lead to the results. Core values equals results. And he's like, huh. I could just hear this, like, this guy. and I'll tell you what, man, my brain, every result we have, good, bad, or indifferent, I firmly believe are a complete result of the core values we live in our life. And as a LO, we have this opportunity to define those values. As a branch manager, we have an opportunity to define these values. As a leader, as a CEO of any company, I don't care. I always tell people I don't care about mortgages. And by the way, this is a company, like my company has done 500,000 loans since I got there. They did 5,000 when I got there. They're at 500,000 since I got there. I left now. I sold out and I'm gone, but about, a few months ago, but 500,000 from 5,000. Like, how do you do that? And it's because we created something greater than ourselves, and it was about building a core value driven organization. So what I would say is to an LO or to a branch manager is the company's going to do what it's going to do. But if I would probably try to align myself with the core value driven organization that I believed in their values. But if I didn't want to make that move, I would just control it at my own, down at the ground floor at my level, because core values equals results. I've gone so far, Todd and Dave, where I bring it into my family. It's actually one of the reasons I decided to leave as CEO of TMS. I realized that I needed a break from the business, and my values. I traveled in 2018 192 days. Didn't sleep in my bed, and I had to make a change. And my number 6 core value for our family is balance. We call it movie night. And I was like, I'm out of alignment with this. And I was 40 years old, and I'm like, I want to make a change. So for me, we have an opportunity to affect our families, our personal lives, our businesses by being really clear about what our core values are and then bringing them into life. My book really is an easy, simple framework on how do you do that. And I take you step by step. I teach people through all the scar tissue I got on how to do it. Because for me, I was just this mad scientist CEO that just played with it until it happened, and I love that I can impart that wisdom now. Oh, you're on mute, Dave.
God, that was a JV move. I thought it was a
like you, Dave.
Right? Like, come on, Dave Savage. Anyways, guys. So guys, this is the book. We did also mention scaling up early on, just because we both have a backstory and it's a great book. But guys, don't buy this book right now. Like, to your point, guys, this is the book for Mortgage Coach this month. And I haven't read it. I've had it. I bought it. I'm going to read this book this weekend. I already bought the audiobook. I got this book. I got that book. I can just tell you right now, I am so pumped by your story. And I need to upgrade my values game. I mean, I do have written values for my family. We call it the Savage Family Mission. I've always been a values-driven leader, but I could go to another level. And I would just say, everybody listening to this at Mortgage Coach, we've got what we call a why. I think it's called, no, not why. Why. The Mortgage Coach Why Worksheet, guys. So you could go into our support center right now and pull up the Mortgage Coach Why Worksheet. Now, I think you need to buy the book, but you need to download that Why Worksheet. And I would love to riff with you on this a little bit, Darius. I'm actually, when I'm not talking, I'm going to go pull it up and at some point show it on the screen, because one of the exercises I recommend every loan officer to do, and let's just talk to loan officers right now.
Sure.
Like, what's your mortgage why?
Yeah.
And when you come up with this mortgage why that's beyond commission checks, it starts with values. You can't even write your why until you come up with your values, and then you write your why around that.
All right.
And then one of the things we teach when we deploy Mortgage Coach, Darius, is that I don't care whether it's a CRM, whether it's Mortgage Coach in our technology. If you're going to deploy a new piece of technology and you're going to use it well, you need a why. And it needs to be, and I've always found that, like, I've rolled out Mortgage Coach now to tens of thousands of loan officers, hundreds of mortgage companies. And wherever we have the most success is where they're clear on their why.
Yeah.
And around, what's your Mortgage Coach why? That's why when I do a lot of mortgage interviews, at some point, well, why? Why do you use Mortgage Coach? But guys, that starts with a value too. And I always believe that if one of your values is my advice matters, like you really care that when you talk to a family that my advice matters, you're probably going to become a mortgage coach. And if that is not truly a value of yours, you might see other people doing it. You may know it's better, but you know what? You probably won't adopt it, or you'll half-ass adopt it. You'll use it when you get grinded. This guy's a rate shopper and I got to use this mortgage coach thing, but you won't do it for every family. So what are your thoughts on that? That not only as a loan officer, you need to have your why, you need to have your values, period. But when it comes to adopting new skills, new technology, you almost got to have values and a why around it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So what I say is first of all, you guys could take what I'm about to say to the bank. I'm giving you something to bank right now. People pay for clarity. Okay. People buy clarity. You buy clarity, your customers buy clarity, your family buys clarity. With clarity, people pay money. If they're clear on what you're doing, why you're doing it, they will pay you for it if they like it. But people pay for clarity. So I wholeheartedly agree. And what I say, Dave, to dovetail off what you're saying, is that when you get clear on your purpose and your values, 4 things happen, but it has to become the language of your life, right? And it's essentially this. Number 1, you create the ultimate decision-making engine. In my book, we say, number 1, you create the ultimate decision-making engine. Number 2, it creates a magnet for talent. In this case, it's a magnet for your customers. Your customers, and Simon Sinek says this, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I'm going to argue they buy who you are, right? So you will start to align people that believe what you believe if you can get clear on this. The other thing that it does is it creates the language for the organization. So it creates the ultimate decision-making engine. The last but not least, pardon me, it creates what I call invisible scale, which is people start to align up. You know it, you do it. When there's someone who you're like, man, that guy, that person, that guy, that girl, I vibe with them. The way they do conduct their business, I can relate. I appreciate that. But we got to get clear on what our values and why are, so that we can then use it in a way to market ourselves, use it in a way to create decisions, right? So every decision we made at TMS, it had to align to the values or it didn't. And all the way down to what technology we're getting. Does that technology make our values true or untrue? Does that project we're working on make our values true or untrue? I will tell you this. Does that customer make our values true or untrue? I encourage all of you, fire your customers that break your values. You got a customer that's treating your process like dirt, cancel their loan. Get them out of the pipeline. Tell them to go elsewhere. What you do is this. Yeah, you're like, Darius, are you crazy? I'm going to lose an $8,000 check? Yeah, no. But you're going to tell that processor, I care about you more than a check. You think that they're going to leave you when someone comes knocking on the door to offer them a job and gives them a $30,000 signing bonus, like we know is happening right now? They're not even going to think about it. So it'll pay dividends when you do things like that. But we have to put our values first. And one of the things I don't like, that I didn't like, that I saw with a lot of people, is they don't. The business becomes too transactional, and the mortgage business is a transactional business. And I think that's an opportunity. You can have a transaction-ship or you can have a relationship. And people talk about relationship all the time, yet they'll grind on people for pricing. They'll sit there and grind on their team to get more out of them. It's all about the dollar. The reality is this: human beings want to be part of something greater than themselves. You do. I do. We all do. So you have an opportunity to step up and make your branch or your practice about something greater than yourself when you get clear on your why, you get clear on your values. And it'll start to attract people, because people want clarity. People want to know who they're working with. That's trust. So I put it out there. If you applied at TMS, the first thing it would say wasn't what the job was. It was what our values were. Then it said, if you're still reading this, here's what the job is. Because people want clarity. They want to know who they're signing up for. They're going to know sooner or later. They're going to get there and they're going to be like, oh, I hate this guy. He's an asshole. I thought you said his core values are have fun. It's not very fun. You know, we see this all too often. Oh, wow, our team. And then they grind their team to a pulp. And you're like, that's not wow, our team. You know, people do this all day long. And our industry is notorious for it. And I looked at that and I was like, I love this. Why did TMS grow so fast? Because I knew everybody else was doing that stuff. And I was like, oh, my number one core value at TMS is people matter, period. When did I build that? 2013. when all these companies were coming out of the bust boom. It was just turning. And I'm like, this is an opportunity. In that year, I hired 66 delegated underwriters, 66 DEs I hired. 66. And this is a company that was just starting. I was by the dozens I'd hire them. In 2016, I hired 250 LOs. And that was during Brexit. Rates were getting crushed. And they were leaving their jobs and coming to where I was because they'd heard how amazing we were. So this stuff is like 2 out of 3 hires at TMS come from an ERP program we built, employee referral program. 2 out of 3. We don't have to pay recruiters. I never paid recruiters. Why? I created a magnet for talent. People wanted to show up. And we were very discerning of who got to be there. And you guys all have that opportunity, but you got to step up and make it happen.
Boom, dude. I mean, this has been phenomenal. So I want to get a little tactical. I'm going to show our why worksheet, and Darius, feel free to be candid. You know, like if there's some edits to this or things that you're like, this is good, but don't, feel free. And we design this so that when we roll out Mortgage Coach, we just find that if someone is clear on their mortgage why, and it goes beyond a commission check in a transaction, they're going to have a Mortgage Coach why. And if they have a Mortgage Coach why, they adopt our technology. And so, you know, it starts with the words that are part of your why. And I have interviewed hundreds of top producing loan officers. And Todd, I think you and I created this together. Well, I don't think, I know Todd and I created this together, and we're like, hey, what are the words that a lot of top producers do? So guys, if there's not a word on here that you have a value, great. You know, come up with all the words, and then, you know, kind of vet it down to your top 6, get it down to 3. Now we're not saying only have 3 words, but we just want to, like, what are those words? And it should, like, if you do that process, you should be able to write your mortgage why. Like, you should be able to, in a sentence or 2, like, why are you a mortgage professional? And then after you've done that, you can't have a Mortgage Coach why until you have a mortgage why. Then, you know, get clear and describe, why do I want to use Mortgage Coach? And I did put a collection. So anybody, guys, this is in our support center. There'll be a link in this call. This thing's already downloaded as a file in our Facebook group, guys. I took some, you know, just top performing Mortgage Coach leaders, and I put some of their words in here, guys. So, I mean, we're spoon feeding this to you. It looks like we need to update some of the companies that these people work for. So Robert, make a note. We've got to update our Mortgage Coach whys as I'm going through this. But Darius, what are your thoughts? Like, what are your, this is great, but, or here's what I like best about this?
No, at first glance, it's cool. And I know a lot of those companies there are other companies that did business with us, or the Bay Equity, for instance. Aliva Fi, my business partner, was one of the founders of that company, but great companies. And no, it looks good, man. I'm going to go back to what I said before. People pay for clarity. So I think that, you know, can you optimize that? Maybe. I don't know. At first glance, there was nothing that I could think of that I would critique, and I'd be brutally honest with you if I thought that there was something to change.
So one more thing I want to get out of you, then, Todd. I'm going to let you go into the wrap up mode. A lot of people, I don't know if you heard it when he said it, people pay for clarity. And guys, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what Mortgage Coach is. It is saying, you know, like, is a fee worksheet, if you were a borrower getting into mortgage debt, is rate, payment, cash to close, clarity. You know what? It might be clarity for a transaction, which, guys, when people are getting a mortgage, it's more than well, it's your choice. If you just want to be a transaction coordinator, then this is good, you know, but it's confusion, it's commoditization, it's status quo. It's what everybody does. And Darius, I don't even know if you know exactly what Mortgage Coach does, but this is it. It's a total cost analysis. So it's got the company's brand. It's got the loan officer's picture. The loan officer can put a video and put their personalization and words around it. And like, if you were doing a refinance, and tell me what you think about this, again, give any feedback you have, but going beyond the transaction is what today's loan officer needs to do. Like, hey, here's your current loan. Here's a refinance loan. Compare it. But guys, every loan officer does that. Let's go beyond that. Let's say, hey, what if we took that monthly payment and you prepaid your mortgage? How much interest would you save? And then guys, this is the mortgage coach magic. Now let's look at that over windows of time that matter to the family. Like families, if you want to be more than I have the lowest rate, then you need to deliver more than a rate and fee. You need to show people, hey man, here is the transaction, but here's a strategy. And it's always important to look at that strategy over time. What are your thoughts? By the way, did you know what Mortgage Coach did? Did you know that's what we did?
No, I know I didn't. I mean, I knew the name. I didn't know exactly what you guys did. I firmly believe that LOs that are commodities, that treat loans like a commodity and a transaction and rely on technology to do all their work, are probably going to be out of a job in the next few years, because the technology and price will be fully commoditized, and the only reason you're going to work, I mean, the full process will get automated at some point, and the way that you're going to be able to win is by having relationship and building relationships and showing that you can attract people, because with blockchain and AI, it's not going to be pretty for people that are just out there doing like commodity transactions. Yeah, they're going to get crushed. You're going to get crushed. I would not want to be an LO if that was my business model. I would want to look for technologies that align to my values. I would exploit them. If this is a technology that's going to align to your values, I would exploit that. I'd go out there and live my values, and I attract people that align to those things. And I'd go look for companies and technologies that align to my values. And I go out there and I would push to create value beyond just the payment and the interest rate. Because I will tell you this, that is already pretty commoditized. You will lose your career in the next decade if that's what you're doing.
So let's do another example, because it's just cool aligning Mortgage Coach to values. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you're looking for a rate, to your point, Darius, you can get a rate in a transaction and qualify, but can you get advice? And are you building a personal brand? And to me, great advice for every first-time home buyer is, hey, column A, this is renting. Hey, here's purchasing homes at different purchase prices. What does that mean to you monthly? And then, of course, guys, this is the playbook for living the values of a loan officer that's got a sustainable career. What does that look like over 60 months? What does that look like over 10 years? You need to give advice, not price. One more, Darius, and then we'll go into just kind of a wrap-up mode. But I want to get your thoughts on this. Like, this is one of the things that we teach and train loan officers to do. And there's a lot of loan officers coming out of COVID that they either want to improve their current home or they want to move up. And so here's a story where, hey, typical loan officer, family comes to a loan officer, hey, you can refi your loan, save $322 a month. Or, hey, you want an extra bedroom? Well, let me look at that move up in column B. Your payment would be $500 more, but you qualify for 5% down. Now, Darius, this client had $120,000 in equity. So a Mortgage Coach loan officer is able to say, hey, you can buy the new home non-contingent, realtors like that. You could sell that home, and then you could take that monthly payment and you can recast your mortgage. And guys, showing that with clarity. Now, Darius, what this family decided to do is say, hey, what if we bought the new home, we sold the home, and then we put that money with our financial planner? Mortgage Coach can say, oh, well, based off your financial planner's rate of return, check it out. You're actually going to build more equity over 15 years by investing that. So, the family's netting out more net worth. The family's getting more liquid. Family gets their home. That's what the loan officer of the future needs to be a master of. Again, my opinion. I'm Mr. Mortgage Coach. You agree?
Yeah. I have a buddy that he does he's a futurist, and he does a bunch of work around what is the future of consultative selling. And
what's his name, by the way?
His name is Mike Maddock. And he did this huge study. And what he said was people will be basically more, and he used mortgage, insurance, financial services. It doesn't matter. He said the platform is what people are going to buy. And then the level of trust is how you're going to get the business. Platform, trust. That's it. And pricing will optimize. It'll change. There will be massive margin compression is my guess. A lot of people who are like acting like 2020 is the new norm, I hate to break it to you, but 2005 wasn't the new norm. Well, the bigger the party, the bigger hangover. If I was in any LO shoes, I'd be I'd be doing everything I could to get ready and to maintain my business by working to get purchases, creating value, getting with technology partners and coaches that can show me a better way to get clients, and getting my value straight so I can go out there and get business. Because people that are just riding the easy street, see you on the other side, buddies. You're not going to be in this business.
Dude, so values first, guys. And I want you, if you're new to the mortgage business, mortgage coach is a must for you. But you know what's more important than mortgage coach? Getting clear on your values, getting clear on your mortgage why. And when you have that documented, now look at mortgage coach. What's your why? If you're not using a CRM, you need to do the same thing. Like, what's your CRM why? Because if you don't have a CRM why, you're going to play with your CRM, weekly, monthly. If you want to be elite and you want to be one of the best loan officers in America, you use your CRM hourly. You deliver a mortgage coach experience. And then there's other technologies. So Todd, we got 8 minutes left. Dude, this call has been magic. I'll hand it off to you to ask questions or, unpack takeaways.
I'm still laughing at when you said if you're a fee worksheet loan officer that you're choosing just to be a transaction coordinator. That just was the best quote I've ever heard.
Did you write that down? I actually didn't hear myself say that, but
I wrote it down and I put it into the Facebook chat because I just loved it. And I thought that was just so, that was so true. And it's kind of funny, as Darius, as you just said, that LOs today can't be riding on their laurels. I didn't want to ask earlier, but you said you started off in a call center, and I feel like so many loan officers right now have call reluctance. They got call reluctance to call their past clients to get refis, which is silly, but you have even more call reluctance to call realtors to try to get that purchase business going. What are your suggestions there?
Yeah, pick up the phone. I don't know. I mean, get over it or figure out a better way to get business through the door. Because if you are just relying on referral business because it's so easy right now, you're going to get hammered. Just close your eyes, go back to December of 18, and there you go. That's your life. Except it's going to be worse because rates are in the twos. The people who have loans in the twos now.
Yeah, I think people forgot about margin compression, and to have you say that again, they may not remember back to 07 and what loans were like back then, but everyone on this call should remember margin compression. And if you are new and you don't remember it, definitely look it up because we definitely could have a little darker times ahead.
Hey, I do want to add something, guys, there, because if you're new and you have fear, I mean, to Darius' point, you got to figure it out, you got to get after it. So whatever your morning ritual it is, get ready for combat. But also, guys, I get it. Confidence comes from doing, and ultimately the doing that's going to give you the most energy is making the actual calls and doing the grind. But I would push you to listen to some of our interviews. We've done Scriptapalooza twice, where everybody on that is $100 million producer and they're sharing their best scripts. Last year, the most viewed video in Mortgage Coach in our platform, I put it in LinkedIn, was "What's your rate?" Where I think we had about 10 loan officers where we said, ring, ring, what's your rate? And then you got to listen to these ballers talk about how they finesse that conversation. So I would push you at any level, listen to that and replace some of your Netflix time. I mean, guys, I love Netflix. There's a few things that I watch on it, but you are a mortgage professional. Listening to that, what's your rate call? Don't do it once. Replace some of your Netflix times with that. And then to Darius's point, you got to pick up the phone. You got to make calls. You got to do the grind. And the more you do it, the easier it will get. Todd, what else?
Can I say this, David? If I was a mortgage originator right now, I would be really uncomfortable about how good things are. And the reason, and people are like, what? I just had the best year I ever had. I would be the most uncomfortable I've ever been, because I'm telling you, this is a cyclical business. I'm 20 years into it. The bigger the party, the bigger the hangover. That is just a fact. And for me, I would be building my pipeline for Q3, Q4, 2021 right now. And I'd be getting ready for 2022 by working. I double the amount I was working to get ready for my volume to go down so that my volume actually stayed flat. I would be doubling my effort right now. I would work as hard as I possibly could so I would have the momentum. I would be investing in coaching, investing in technology. I would be investing in my growth, because when it turns, you will be the winner or you will be on the loser. There will be winners and losers. And the people that do what I just said will be the winners. And the losers are going to be back to doing I don't know what, but they're not going to be in mortgage. That's for sure.
Boom. And I got to pile onto that. And I said this quote a couple years at the digital mortgage stage, but everybody's worried like, oh, technology is going to eliminate loan officers. Well, first of all, guys, it's already doing that. But your biggest threat is other local referral-based professionals that are leveraging technology and media, and they're doing exactly what he just said. And it is happening. The machine is coming. You know, there's multiple public companies now that are mortgage companies that can operate at a whole different level. And when price compressions come, they will be coming hard. And there are mortgage coaches that are using their CRM. They're using Mortgage Coach. They're great leaders. They have coaches, and they'll take what's left. So if you're a loan officer and you're not using your CRM, you're not using Mortgage Coach, you don't have values driven, you will get crushed by those who do, you know, and I align with that totally. 3 minutes left, Todd. Where do we go?
You know,
No, we got to get Darius off on time. So
Yeah.
I promised him that. He's got another meeting to jump into.
No, I just think that was a call full of gems, Darius. I think that was such a gift to the community to really get people going on focusing on values. And I think that just that last few minutes we've had really given the shift of mindset. I think that everyone has to know that activity has to increase to get to the results. And, you know, Darius gave us a whole different equation now where he put values ahead of activities and results. And so I'm just grateful, Darius, that you took the time to be here. It was great to virtually meet you. I know you added a ton of value. And I think from a action plan perspective, I think if you're a loan officer on this call and you're part of this community, you need to take a step back. I'd encourage you to get the book. I'm going to jump on Audible and purchase it as well so that I can listen to it and really reevaluate my own personal core values and figure out really how do I need to approach that, because I know as I'm talking to you guys and I'm talking to my own team that's going to be really critical as we head into finish out this great party, as Darius said, but let's make sure we head into this next hangover prepared.
So guys, I would love for you to share some of your core values. I'd love to know your mortgage why. I am gonna, put it in comments of this chat. Maybe over the weekend, I will recirculate some conversation. Like, what are your values? What is your why? What is your mortgage coach why? Let's party on this topic. Let's talk about it. Let's collaborate. Put it in the Mortgage Coach channel. Darius, remind us on the website, any social media that people want to reach out to.
Yeah.
Remind us on your links, dude.
Yeah, you go to my website, therealdarius.com, all my socials there. Right now, I exited my business and pushing the book, but the big thing I'm doing right now is I'm working with probably your boss's bosses. So if you got I have 7 companies, they call me their secret weapon, and helping these mortgage companies go from, they all want to be top 10 lenders. So anyone that's working with a mortgage company that the CEOs want to have someone ride shotgun and help them really scale the business, that's what I'm doing. Even non-mortgage, I have 3 non-mortgage clients, but I'm doing that and read the book. Obviously I'm pushing the book and if you guys, I'm doing big speaking events too. So those are the ways people can link up with me and how I can add value. And I love doing shows, and that's what I'm doing.
Dude, you're a badass, bro. I appreciate that. I hope you'll come back, and we got you off on time. Take care, brother.
Thanks, brothers. Later, guys. Peace out.
Guys, this call is a wrap. Give it a like if you liked it. Share it with your mortgage friends. And I would say this is something to share with your leadership team. If you watch this, share it with your branch manager. Share it with your CEO. This is a valuable call to share with other leaders. Todd, any last words from you, bro?
No, I think you crushed it. I'll just say it again, is keep using a fee worksheet if you just want to be a transaction coordinator.
Yep. And use Mortgage Coach if you want to be the loan officer of the future. Take care, y'all.